Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Mike Armstrong podcast show. And this morning, we're joined by Dr. Raymond Davies, who is a senior international strategist, originally from the Midlands in England, in the UK, but currently on the South Coast. So, how are you doing today, Raymond? You okay?
I'm very well indeed, and down here on the south coast in Bournemouth, but not quite the weather to go to the beach, hence living down here.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. It's a bit warmer than the Midlands, though, just a degree or two, I guess.
Yes, yes, and then definitely the great thing about here on the south coast is it's probably the mildest weather. Very rarely do we have a frost or any snow. So as you go further north, the temperature deteriorates right the way up to Scotland. So very fortunate to be down here on the south coast.
Nice, yes, nice part of the world. A friend of mine lives in Brighton, and I've been going down there before the pandemic quite a bit to see him, do a bit of networking and all that sort of thing. And yeah, I like going down on the south coast, but
Yeah, and there's so many beautiful towns along the south coast. You know, you're going all the way down to the Cornwall, Devon, up there, across like Portland, Weymouth, right the way across Bournemouth, and then of course all the way across to Brighton. There's just some beautiful places to visit.
yeah, some really nice places, some really nice places. So tell us a little bit, senior international strategist. What do you do, and how did you come about getting involved in that?
That's a great question and hard ones after, like, in a sense, hey, where do you start after more than 30, 40 years almost involved? Why did I evolve to this situation? It's really interesting, you know, if you're born in Birmingham, right in as close as you can get into the center of an island, which is Great Britain, there's a great drive within you. What's out there? What is there out there beyond Birmingham? And it was a great place I grew up in. I really enjoyed it. It really sets you up for the adventure in the world. And I had this burning desire to go out there. What is out there? And of course, part of the path we take is it's all very well wanting to go out there, but what persona will you go out there? I was fortunate enough to really enjoy studying. So that took me to university and a great university, Aston University. And I chose, and then you would understand this as a Welshman, I saw my father coming back from working in a factory and moaning about the managers. And I thought, you know what, living in a great industrial center like Birmingham, you know what, I want to go into industrial management.
Yeah.
So I decided to do metallurgy, and metallurgy is great because you can be a scientist and an engineer, and yes, but and also it opens a huge world to you in a whole lot of sectors. And I was so fortunate to get involved on the defense side and the international nature of defense side. That really set me on a path to go out there, even within that type of career. But the end of the Cold War came about at the very time that I was crossing over for my PhD. And that was the moment I really decided to be an entrepreneur, get out there with business, an interrelation of business. And that's really what set me on the track. So I'm talking a lot of experience. And most of my time has been outside the United Kingdom and living in a whole range of different places and absorbing those cultures
Yeah.
and in relationship to their attitude to business and business opportunities.
Yeah. So one of the main areas, if you like, of business and of international trade and all that sort of thing that you like to sort of concentrate on.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting as well because an alternate career for me, and I have a burning passion in politics,
Yeah.
and really that kind of phase between the environment in which we operate our businesses and the policies in which government apply. Either that drives you in a particular business direction or creates the huge opportunities that government and government policy presents, both within your own national and international arena. And what I realized between that crossover between being an entrepreneur and understanding the private sector, a desire to get involved on the policy side, that between that space, there are huge opportunities and you have a whole planet in which to play those opportunities. So I really found that sweet spot there operating in that space. And I would say there's not many of us, but it's a really important role and I embrace it.
Yeah. Okay. That's a bit like me. I used to work in the tech sector, and I'm a sales and marketeer. And there's not many people who are either technical or salesy Yeah, there's not many people who operate in that middle ground between both, if you like, and that's where I always operated. So I understand
Yeah,
exactly
I
the
fully
position.
understand that as well, Mike, because in my first business, I was a young graduate, PhD, driving my own business, R&D business, really building that business, and then all of a sudden get struck by the early recession in the 1990s and having to sell that business on. In that recovery, I wanted to find out why I couldn't take it anymore, and I wanted to get out as a managing director. And part and parcel of that was enhancing my sales skills and negotiation skills, really understanding that. So I know you've done it as well, reading the best in the game. What is it? What is it about sales? And what makes sales different from negotiation?
Yeah.
So I really got into that to such an extent. I decided to be a business mentor and coach during the 90s and really taught a lot of businesses of all sizes and all sectors, those very skills that you talk about, Mike.
Yeah.
And it's rare. It's rare that you have, me with a PhD in metallurgy, you with a technical background as well, going into sales is exactly that. That's a rare spot that you're space that you're into.
Yeah, and I think those middleman spaces are, like you say, there is great opportunity because the either end of the scales, they can't communicate together a lot of the time effectively because they speak a different language, and so they need the translator.
Absolutely, Mike, and it's really, I'm glad you put it that way, and it's unique in our kind of conversation here. That is exactly it. What tends to happen is people tend, and it's understandable, see the world from where they're at because you have to put so much effort into it. How can you keep up with all the opportunities, and think about that on the government side, and never the twain will meet. There needs to be that communication across, and I'm a great champion now where the old business model, one business at a time, and you compete with another one is so, 19th, late 20th century. We have to collaborate together. And that means both within our kind of business environment and the translators that can do that, but also in communicating that with the government guys on the other side. We've got to communicate. We've got to do this better. So and there are few of us because it's you don't choose this, Mike. Can I say that? You evolve into it.
It
And I know
chooses
you
you.
will agree with me with that. I never chose this career
No,
path. It was never my choice. It kind of evolved.
Yeah. It's just because you've got the right ingredients to do it. And over time, as you experience different things in life and you see opportunity, I suppose, where no one else is filling that gap, and you're just thinking, well, if nobody
I
else is
think
filling
you've
it,
just
then
hit it on hit the head on the nail there. I literally the whole of my life, the flow of opportunity that I see is continuous, and even more so now as you get wiser and better as a connector. I think absolutely it's the vision of the opportunity. I must go back. It's really interesting. If everyone remembers the .com era, when literally you just had to put something with .com on it and set up a kind of situation you could make a fortune just talking about it. And a huge bubble that came about from that. I got involved with a lot of opportunities with that. And there was this kind of panic feeling with me. If I don't get this, it will pass me by. Oh my God, this is my chance in my life. And that was such a great lesson because in fact, that's not how it works. These waves of opportunities keep coming.
They're constant.
And also, the other aspect of it is the increasing interference of governments in markets and entrepreneurship is creating more and more waves as they're trying to, rather than allowing the evolution of technology or the evolution of markets, and they're trying to control them, channel them. And what they actually are doing are creating more opportunities in the space in between. So the opportunities of which is being created by what I would say an overreaching government is incredible because each government's different around the world. That's why they try to do this kind of collective control when they can't control I'd say the natural evolution of opportunity. And the people that see it so clearly and absolutely want to embrace that. So, for example, the phenomenon of Google, Amazon, I mean, in a sense, it's shutting the high street down. Is that what governments wanted? No, not at all. So, so here you go. You can't stop that explosion of ideas and ideas that work and opportunities. And if you look at the planet as a whole, as I do, it's nonstop. And
right,
also the interrelation between that.
And,
So
and,
it's
and
an
it's only
exciting
just
time,
begun.
actually, Mike.
Yeah, it's only just begun, hasn't it? It's only just begun.
Yeah,
The whole
absolutely.
globalization now, we're nowhere near where it's going to be ending up.
No, and it's really funny because a lot of, it's the kind of PhD academic with me. I'm starting to write in economic papers with some leading economic professors and all this type of thing. But basically, I believe the 2020s is going to be an explosion of ideas. Whole sectors are going to leap into whole different ideas. I think the other thing was the pandemic has shown is the large companies have relied very much on their entrepreneurial type supply chains to create their balance sheets. Now, they're the ones struggling. So this is a great freedom that can come. And I think the 2020s will be truly explosive in opportunities. And the evolution of what we are all together on this planet. And I'm excited for it, which is wild for me to say that in my late 50s.
I definitely am. I thought because of the global recession, the credit crunch, I thought that credit crunch was 4 or 5 years of pain with an elongated no growth period for 5 years, and then a little bit of green shoots, so it was like a 10-year problem, really, with not even being that great for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So a 15-year period, which is basically up till now. So we hadn't really recovered from it until this pandemic hit. We were still just.
Yeah, and I would add further to that, Mike, because what's really been happening is governments and politicians started fearing the natural cycles of a capitalist,
the boom and bust,
the bust, so they wanted to smooth that out. So what they, like all planners wanting to plan this and smooth it out, they started to fall into the quantitative easing trap. If the books don't balance, just print more money. The trouble is that what it's done is brought them more and more into trying to control economies and our lives. And the pandemic, I think, was the ultimate end game, where they really piled in and doubled down on that. The 2020s now are going to be the rollback of government. And how do we adjust what in effect is controlled by quantitative easing, where they choose the winners, not the markets.
No.
Back to true capitalism, where capital goes to where it's going to be creating the wealth, rather than we're going to set policy and direct where that quantitative easing goes. And I think the other thing for us in the UK, there's been almost a deliberate policy to target entrepreneurs and directors and not support them, even though they shut the economy down. To me, that was an illustration of how much they're trying to control something you cannot control.
No, that's right.
And that's why I'm excited for the future.
But I was thinking
this. You and I have had, Mike. I think, in a sense, it's our time to help facilitate what's coming as we come out of lockdown.
Yeah, because I was thinking, because of that situation, I thought, well, this pandemic situation could end up being 20 years. But actually, I've reassessed that calculation now because of all the innovation and the technology led by entrepreneurs. I myself think that this is going to be a really exciting time. I think there will be a struggle in the economy for a while because there's going to be a lot of fat, cut off. A lot of the companies that weren't going anywhere are going to be lost. I think there's going to be a massive boom of technology companies. There was already tech dominating the FTSE and that, but it's going to just
at some point, what's holding this back is government's fear. Yes, oh my God, we're going to keep propping everything up. The other aspect is, of course, they're propping up what are known as zombie businesses, i.e., they can't exist without the government prop up. Now, all that does is direct valuable resources away from the very entrepreneurs that we're saying, the very energy that can come in the recovery. I think the other aspect as well is, it's all very well for us choosing to be entrepreneurs. A lot of people out there choose careers and jobs, and that's really important for them in the stability of their lives. So it's really adjusting those people. I think have been hit particularly hard on the pandemic, and we can name the sectors. Hospitality being a classic one.
Travel.
yeah. So it's about really the entrepreneurship in those type of sectors, and I would add the aerospace sector as well, in which I'm involved in. That allows the new energy to come in that creates those new jobs. Now there's a transition period in there, and it's a painful one, but let it happen, because it comes out in a whole new dynamic that brings in the stability and resilience that people need in their lives, and jobs created.
Yeah, I'm surprised the government haven't come up with a big tax on online yet, an online retail tax. I'm surprised that haven't come out yet, because obviously that's one of the things which is giving the online as a massive advantage.
Well, here's the dilemma. The dilemma has evolved because the world's central banks are coordinating in the quantitative easing. The issue that has now done is you don't have to be reliant on a tax base for your expenditure, because you can just have the central banks print the money, and with all due respect to our UK Treasury, they print it directly into the government budget. There is no bond market. It's just printed straight into the budget now. And most countries are like that. Don't say I'm picking out on the UK. But what it is therefore they're not dependent on a tax base.
Yeah.
So they have to go through the motions that there is a tax base, but they're not dependent on it. They've gone way beyond that, and they have a big way beyond that. So, as Britain crosses its 100% point of debt to GDP, what that means is, even if all the money of all the UK economy paid the debt, couldn't pay it off. Yes. So at the moment, when it's close to 0%, which is what they're constructed, that's fine. But also the Chancellor this time in our looking at our finances in the UK, even now starts worrying about the amount we have to pay for interest at near 0%, because when those 1% go up, oh my God, that hits the government budget. So I think that's part and parcel of the issue. I think there's a lot of fear, whereas what is it about being an entrepreneur? You see the fear as part of your drive for solution.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes entrepreneurs different.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to ask you about this, because you know a bit more about this than me. But we seem to owe this money. We borrow more and more. It seems to be like a never-ending tick. How can I get the number for this guy? That's a joke.
No, I'm going to help.
Who do we owe?
So here's the crucial aspect, because borrowing a debt it's okay. In fact, it's really interesting, because when I was working with a lot of small businesses, growing small businesses in the 90s as a business coach and mentor, I also kind of did a liaison with key banks at the time. And if I was a mentor, the bank would lend to the person, because of course, you've got Dr. Davies involved with you. And the reason is that success in business means you're burning cash flow faster. And in burning cash flow faster, it takes longer to bring your income in. So all of a sudden your debt position or your overdraft position would grow, not because you're failing, because you're succeeding. Now that doesn't matter, because you're driving the growth of a profitable business that will create the profits that can pay back the debt going forward. That notion has been lost, because what's happening with government debt, that entails tax increases. That is actually a hindrance and a drag on that type of process. And that's the dilemma that the UK has got itself into, and decided to go for the fiscal drag of taxing the very wealth generators coming out of this pandemic, which is a misunderstanding of how wealth is generated and the use of debt. So debt into the private sector can generate the wealth. Increasing debt in government can have the reverse effect.
It doesn't.
And these kind of understandings are kind of confused in the debate that's going on. That's why I stay in that sweet spot, because a lot of the work I do to create the international opportunities for my clients involves those dialogues with those governments.
And what I don't understand is who do we owe, and are they ever going to get their money back? Because I don't see them as surely just like with a bad debt at a bank or a company, at some point they're just going to write it off.
Well, what's happening at the moment is we owe ourselves, called the Bank of England. And in the United States, the same thing with the federal bank, which is actually a private
So
bank.
we just owe ourselves, basically.
So
so
we owe ourselves. But in the same way, it's creating this fantasy world of government can spend money until the end of time, and we all know this is weird. And then as entrepreneurs, you're going, well, we need the liquidity to grow and grow our businesses for what you want, but many times that can counter what they want for their policy.
Yeah.
You see, so like the green energy drive to drive out fossil fuels needs government subsidy to create that, because otherwise we would still be focusing on fossil fuels because it's cheaper. So watching these distortions in the market also creates the opportunities in which to play in those spaces. If government's going to dominate in certain areas, a whole green industry has grown from that. But then there's a space in between, as the grid system can't always be wind, it can't be on and off. We still want electricity. So there's a whole lot of opportunity coming from the mismatch between policy and government-led drive to the realities of what really happens on the ground. That's where the entrepreneur plays. That's where money is made.
What do you think is going to happen? Like soon, there's going to be a lot more AI and robots. It's already happened in the manufacturing sectors or whatever. It's going to be happening more and more and more in more and more sectors. Yeah. Do you think at some point there's going to be like a state salary basically, and then just business just happening, or how do you see that sort of future panning out?
See, that's a great question. I think you can't stop the digitalization and the evolution to artificial intelligence. I wouldn't say we're there at artificial intelligence at the moment. What we have is the ability to look at data and predict future from that, rather than an artificial mind in it. But those envelopes are being pushed. What it's really looking for is efficiencies of productivity in whatever we do. They call them blockchains or whatever you think. So that revolution is happening. You can't stop it. But it's a positive thing, yes? Now, within that, though, it comes in, and I think you're talking about the human interaction with the robots and everything. Literally, the term given for that is cobots, believe it or not. Yeah. Where by working with that, it actually improves what we are in our businesses or as humans. And now that's a real positive thing. And that kind of revolution that's happening in the health and care space, I think is very exciting towards personalized medicine, healthy aging, and all the consequences of that, i.e. we become productive way into our 70s and 80s. Now that's an economic boom right there. So, but like everything else in these technological changes, and we can look at history, there's going to be displaced people that we really need to be taking care of. That's where I think the whole minimum income comes in. And in the strangest of ways, it being there could be the safety net we need. Yes. Yeah. So in that transition as the world gets wealthier, that everyone has a minimum income basis on which to adjust to a more wealthier situation. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, my thought process is to help people get towards that. Is to do. I don't know why people don't do it. I think it would work really, really well. Just wonder what your thought process is. And that's a 3-day weekend. Because it would be like a middle ground move towards that. I think it would help with unemployment and stuff, because you could have people working the 3-day shift or the 4-day shift, yeah, and actually people would have a better life balance.
The only problem with that, again, you're bringing in government policy to choose, in a sense, making labour more expensive for entrepreneurs. Yeah. So I hear why you're saying that, but that brings a cost consideration for entrepreneurs and building their businesses and employing people. That actually adds to the cost of labour. So therefore, you need huge improvements in productivity to allow that balance. Yeah.
Which I think would actually come, by the way, if you give people 3 days.
No,
off,
I think, and the reason I'm jumping in is for some businesses, that's great. You want fresh staff, you want live staff. And I think a lot of the revolution, I lived a long time in Seattle on the West Coast. That was very much understood. Get your people comfortable, give them as much leave as they want. but they bring back their passion and dynamism to your business. Absolutely, allow that type of freedom and let that happen. But I do not think it should be a government dictate.
No, no.
That's my view as a capitalist.
So
That's
more an economic driver based on results,
yes,
you know.
Yes.
Just like the work-life balance or the work from home now is proven to be in some sectors is proved to be give your staff a better life and they'll do more for you.
Absolutely, and I think again, this pandemic has proved that a lot of, particularly the accounting firms and the law firms, have found the productivity of their people at home is higher than when they're in the office. Yeah. So absolutely, the thing is, I think this is where the mix and the interface in which I work, government policy meaning wealth, could have unintended consequences in the world that generates wealth, which is the entrepreneurs and businesses. And because now in the modern world, you have to perform at such a more and more people are in those boxes, not understanding the unintended consequences. So, us working in the middle space allows that communication, allows those principles to go forward, but under a more flexible framework, which is freedom of choice. And again, I'm just pulling across my political views as well. So, capitalism and freedom of choice, but enabling people to be able to have those choices is really what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. And another one, I'm into, creating innovation and creativity with the public sector, if you like, because I just don't think there's enough of it goes on in that sector, because they're not entrepreneurial minded.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and so another one which I've thought of as well is rather than give everyone their dole money, right, when people are on the dole or on the sick or whatever, right, why don't they just give them like a year or two of it, and allow them a mentor, which could be government controlled, right? And allow them to go and do whatever it is that they want to do in life, right? That's going to make them some money. So there's a lot of people on the dole, for example, and the reason they stay on there for a long time is because they can't get a job doing what they want, right?
Well, so it's really interesting, Mike, you're saying that. I think one of the huge things is a mental health journey you go through, the experience. If you feel disempowered, you can be in a mental health where you just can't get out there, you can't do the stuff you need to. So I know what you're saying. In many ways, having a life coach or someone that gets to know you and say, look, let's get you in the right frame of mind for what do you want from your life? What do you want for your life? And I think that way will get more dynamism in the way that you're saying. I think and I see the big Welsh flag behind you. There's a real danger in Wales because it's geography. You could really get into that depressed state, and that happens a lot in the valleys, as we know. When really, if the jobs were there, if the remit to have a life was there, they would engage. So again, I think it's a mixture of sometimes people need a lot more of that kind of coaching to overcome the barriers that are happening around them. So it's a mixture, really, Mike. I see this as a mixture.
The public sector could just, get rid of these problems much easier by investing in the problem rather than just putting a bandage over it.
Because you jump to the public, the public sector. I always say private sector. I see all government should really do is set the environment in which to live our lives. They shouldn't be dictating to it. And they shouldn't, in a sense, be setting up the programs which they deem would work. And they go through these program cycles all the time. They try to mix it with the private sector, but really they're trying to, how can I say, correct our lives. And every life is unique. But we need a journey that gives us purpose for our life. I think that's what it really is. And including bringing up families and the closeness of families. But we need the means of which to have wealth to do that. We need the means of an income to do that. And I think government tends to fall into the trap of saying you're costing us money. Rather than let's set you on the path of life for a life that you want and would desire.
It's just like these houses at the valleys. If you give them enough money to start a coffee shop or a car garage or just something that they felt valued for, then they'd be a great worker and a great asset for 40 years or whatever. But because they start off with nothing and they've got no desire, no drive, no opportunity, they start off with nothing. You get nothing out of them.
I think there's a real danger though, Mike, because I think you know this and we can talk like this. Not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur or in business for obvious reasons. It's a tough life. an exciting life, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of people are looking for those solid, reliable jobs that give them a steady income profile. Wherever it is, whether it's working at a cafe type situation, and I see that a lot in Wales and the valleys as well. What that brings in, but you need the economic engines that create those type of jobs. So you can, if we talk Port Talbot, you can imagine what it's like with the steel company there, Tata Steel, and what it will be like without it. So I'm a great believer, and that's where my focus is creating those economic engines that create those situations where you create the jobs as well as encourage those entrepreneurs that create the jobs. But there's a critical mass of economic activity that enables that to happen. Now, the governments can be involved in that, and they are, and they're attempting that. So to me, that's where I come from in this philosophy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's really what I do around the world, to be quite honest.
Yeah, but again, if the governments were to set up, give some entrepreneur who has experience, big wedge of capital to inject into, for example, green factories, factories where they're working on, new green innovations and technologies and stuff, because, we've got deadlines to meet and stuff and targets to meet in various different.
So what you have, and I'm going to help you here, Mike, because the only thing I have to say is Delorean, okay?
Yeah.
So that was the route taken at the end of the 70s in the Delorean car factory in Northern Ireland, and it didn't turn out well.
No.
Because another chunk of money was needed, and it wasn't provided by then the transition Thatcher government. So governments have this fear really droving from a Delorean type situation, or even the nationalized industries like we had before, British Steel. There's a fear in governments of overdoing that. So what they've created is a whole bunch of kind of agency type situations, encouraging people into business and cross-subsidizing that at a lower level, when in fact we've got to find and put that real capital behind those entrepreneurs and businesses that can really deliver, rather than denying them that, and government trying its hiddly-piddly way of not doing as directly as you said, but using agents and other people to choose who are the winners and who are the losers.
Well, they invested a load of money.
That's the confusion that's happening in government policy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they invested,
and we entrepreneurs can lead that much more effectively. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Well, they invested a load of money into banks, for example, right, and to keep the banking institutions going, which was needed to be done, because if they go, trust goes and there's a chaos, right? So they needed to do that, but they could easily invest the same sort of money into, like I say, in these places where they've lost all their mines and they've lost all their industries, and now it's just drug addicts living in terraced houses and this bleak and they could easily just set up a green windmill factory, or they could find a local guy and invest in him.
The issue with that is and I think part of the digital revolution is really good, is in the past, coming out of the 19th century, communities used to be dominated around one industry. And I think Wales was particularly that situation. And it's really difficult to transition once that's gone into a more diverse economy. And that's actually been the Welsh government's attempt to create that in Wales, but they've overdone the foreign direct investment rather than, like you're saying, Mike, investing in local business, investing in local entrepreneurs. I think, and it's unique here in the UK, I think we've got a unique opportunity to do that. I think other countries recognize that as well. Because of the pandemic, we really got to be able to sometimes take care of ourselves. What should we have around us in businesses and infrastructure and stuff like that? So in the strange way, I think this is a great opportunity to really, I'm going to say it, trust the private sector, trust the entrepreneurs, that they're much more effective in creating that type of environment. And that's the passion where I'm at, where I can help that happen in those type of areas. Is okay, what's missing here? What's here? What can we add into it to create that massive activity that creates the very situation you're doing? So I'm a great champion for the private sector. Should be leading that, not the government.
No, I agree too, but I just think the government, in what they do, while they're already spending money in, I just think there's better ways they can spend that money. Because the problem is, again, I think
well, can I add in this, Mike? They're not exactly spending money; they're creating it.
Well, yeah.
And in creating it, they're distorting
Yeah.
And in a sense, at some point, they've got to step back and trust entrepreneurs in the private sector, and I would say local communities. It's almost letting go. Don't fear, embrace. I think the connectability that is now happening around the world. I mean, we've just we've talked before. All kinds of phenomena are happening where that connectability is removing the borders, and what can be brought together is just so powerful through the whole social media arena, and we've talked about Clubhouse, which is allowing those dialogues to happen across the world to bring some real great things together. So it's almost the governments need to relax a little, can I put it that way, and really embrace what can come from entrepreneurs, private sector, and local communities. Now, by the way, some devolved economies and mayors are attempting this by saying, here's a fund, come up with some ideas so we can seed fund you. Now, I love that type of idea from the government. So the government's not saying you have to meet a criteria. They're saying, what ideas are there out there? And we'll seed fund that. Perfect. That's what government should be doing in the very way that you're saying.
They should,
So a lot of that's happening at a local level, particularly with more in-line political leadership. So it's kind of happening. We need more of that.
Yeah, I think personally in the job centre, places like that, people should be able to go in and pitch an idea, a bit like with a bank, go in, pitch an idea, they assess your idea, give you somebody to help you pull it off. There should be a lot more of that going on, and there should be.
I will come in with a proviso though. Really, people being given an option of entrepreneurship instead of a job, I think is fundamentally
schools should train people with the two different options as well,
and understand what those options mean. Yes, and I think there's a real danger at the moment. So, for example, there's a big push here in the UK, for innovation, everything, to get a lot of new startups and innovative startups and really prime them with cash. The problem with that is, when do you wean yourself off that government cash and become an actual business? And that's the problem. They're setting up a lot of young people to fail. The statistics are huge. 2/3 of businesses will fail within 10 years. Half within 5. 1/3, quarter in the first 2 years.
And the problem being, because everyone's been taught to become an employee, right, and not an entrepreneur in schools, so therefore they're not entrepreneurial minded. Whereas if the schools had covered both, the job way and the entrepreneur way, probably more of the businesses would succeed, because they'd have more skills to be able to succeed.
Again, in business, there's a whole variety of reasons why you go out of business. And the other aspect as well, just because you fail in business doesn't mean you're a failed entrepreneur. Far from it. You're going through a journey.
Cash flow's the main reason, and that's because people aren't taught sales in school.
But in the same context, some are more suited for that monthly pay pack at the end of the month, and to honestly understand that, or they go that route and then at a later stage go into business. So I think there needs to be a much more psychological understanding, the difference between a job and an entrepreneur, and in the same context, in that, give those options like you're just saying.
Yeah, definitely.
They're just encouraging it because there's no alternative, because how do we create the jobs type of thing.
Exactly. I think if there was an entrepreneur, class in school, and they taught sales and marketing and, recruitment and HR and things like that, then people could choose whether you wanted to go in and get a job, with your geography and your history.
I've been very fortunate in teaching young people, so at college level, 16 to 18, and also at university level. The great aspect about that, I think you're right, there is a way to nurture that through the education system, absolutely. But in the same context, we need to create those local environments that gives that choice, job, entrepreneurship. And I think the governments are getting themselves all confused. And also the foreign direct investment idea is so 20th century, to bring a big business in, because then it will create the jobs. In fact, economically and statistically, that's not what happens. The jobs get created by a more dynamic entrepreneurial SME base than bringing in a large company. And the reason I'm talking like that, that's the Welsh way. Bring a big company in and it creates jobs. No, you really need to be targeting your SME base, bringing them up and taking them to market capture. And that's proved, and there's a couple of economic papers are involved in that, is absolutely the new phenomena, which is fantastic for what you're saying, because in the sense we need lots of those startups with people who realize the journey that they're taking, lots of support in that, but from other people in the private sector and other businesses, so collaborating together in supply chain, and then using that leverage to lobby to government to create the environment and the investment environment that then further grows that forward under that private sector leadership. That's my particular passion. And I think the other huge aspect for me, why am I back in Britain? Because of the whole Brexit global Britain situation, I suddenly realized there's a huge opportunity for Britain not only to do that within our own country, Mike, but to take that to our great friends around the world. And that's exciting.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, that's a great place, I think, to leave it there, really. So tell everyone a little bit about how they can get in touch with you, where they can follow you. How do they contact you if they listen to this and they want to, maybe have a chat with you or do some business? How do they do that?
So the great thing is I'll bring in, because we kind of work together on Clubhouse, Mike. Clubhouse is great. You can DM me there straight into my Instagram account. The other great space in which to do it is, of course, on LinkedIn. And I'm Dr. Raymond Davies, which is pretty distinct. And actually, you'll see the picture, what you're seeing at the top of here behind my face. So you know that you can LinkedIn and start a dialogue there. And I look forward to people reaching out, because it's by working together that will change this world.
Yeah, definitely. I'm big into collaboration, and Clubhouse and LinkedIn, a place like that, anywhere where people can globally collaborate and put good minds together from different experiences and different walks of life. I think that's the best way of solving most of the world's problems, and actually coming up with great solutions for not just solving problems, but actually just giving people what they want out of life, and just giving them either appealing to their desires, whatever, giving them something they want, or helping solve some problems, giving them some solutions that they may need. So whichever way around.
I couldn't agree more, Mike. Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you.
Yeah. So anyone wants to collaborate with myself or with Ray, reach out to us, and we love speaking with people. So nothing else really left for me to say, really, other than having a great day. I know I will. Cheers for coming on, Ray.
Thank you.
Wish you all the best. Bye-bye.
And you too, Mike. Bye.